At my son's funeral, as the pastor read his eulogy, my phone buzzed in my lap. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. I'm alive. Don't trust my wife. I almost dropped the phone right there in the front pew. My heart slammed against my ribs, my throat went dry, and for a moment, I thought maybe grief had finally broken me. But no. The message was still there, glowing in the soft light. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. The organ swelled, its heavy notes echoing off the vaulted ceiling, drowning out the chaos in my head. My son Thomas was supposed to be gone. They said the car accident was fatal. They said his body was beyond recognition, but still, they buried a casket. And yet, I'm alive. I shifted slightly on the wooden pew, clutching my silk handkerchief tighter, hiding the phone in my lap so no one could see. My daughter-in-law Rebecca was sitting 3 seats away, her black lace veil draped over her face, her head bowed just enough to make her look saintly. Her hand dabbed delicately at her cheek with a tissue, though I noticed the tissue never dampened. She had always been a performer, but now I wondered what role she was playing. I stole another glance at the phone. The message had no name, just a number I didn't recognize. My thumb hovered over the screen, wanting to type, wanting to scream for the truth, but the pastor's voice rose again, naming Thomas as a loving husband and devoted son, and the crowd murmured with grief. My chest ached. My boy. If he really was alive, why was Rebecca standing there acting like a widow? When the service ended, people filed past to pay their respects. Some touched my shoulder, some whispered prayers, some simply gave me long pitying looks. I forced myself to nod, smile faintly, thank them. Rebecca played her role perfectly, clutching her veil tighter, leaning into her mother's arms, eyes that never reddened, never welled, but widened and softened just enough when people looked. I slipped the phone back into my handbag and followed her out of the church. The casket was loaded into the hearse, and Rebecca placed a gloved hand gently against the side before turning dramatically toward the crowd. She whispered, "Goodbye, my love," just loud enough for everyone to hear. People sighed. Some even cried harder. I wanted to scream. At the graveside, under the bright afternoon sun, the burial was carried out. Dirt fell against the coffin, hollow and final. I felt like I was being buried with him, crushed under grief and confusion. All I could think of was that message. If it was truly from Thomas, where was he? Why hadn't he come home? And what did he mean, "Don't trust my wife"? After the crowd dispersed, I stood by the grave alone, my cane steadying me against the soft grass. Rebecca approached, her veil lifted now, her face perfectly painted. She pressed a hand against my arm. "You should go home and rest, Mother," she said softly, almost sweetly. But I heard the steel in her tone. I forced a smile, though my stomach churned. "And you, Rebecca? What will you do now?" Her eyes flickered for a second, and then she smiled back, too wide, too polished. "I'll carry Thomas's memory forward. And of course, I'll handle everything he left behind." The words sat heavy between us. Everything he left behind. His company. His fortune. His estate. My house. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. That night, back in my bedroom, I sat with the phone in my lap, staring at the message. My lamp cast a soft glow over the floral wallpaper, over the photographs of Thomas as a boy, laughing in the park, holding his first fishing rod, blowing out candles on his 12th birthday. I whispered to the empty room, "Where are you, son?" Then, another buzz. Another message. From the same number. "Don't ask questions on the phone. She's watching you. I'll explain soon." A chill spread through me. I looked toward the window, half expecting to see someone standing in the dark. I pulled the curtains shut quickly, my fingers trembling. My daughter-in-law had insisted on moving me into the guest wing of the house after the accident, saying it would be better for everyone. Now, I wondered if it was so she could keep me under her watch. The next morning, Rebecca appeared at the breakfast table in a tailored black dress, sipping coffee like it was any ordinary day. Her hair was pinned, her lipstick perfectly painted. I sat across from her, my tea untouched, and studied her. "We'll need to meet with the lawyers this week," she said casually, as if discussing grocery shopping. "Thomas wanted me to handle the accounts. You shouldn't have to worry about any of that at your age." Her voice was smooth, but I heard the hunger beneath it. She wanted control. She wanted everything. I nodded slowly. Yes, at my age perhaps I shouldn't. Her eyes gleamed, and she reached across the table to pat my hand. Exactly. Let me take care of you. I smiled faintly, but inside, something hardened. My son was alive. He had warned me not to trust her. And now, as I looked into her perfectly painted face, I realized she might be more dangerous than I ever imagined. That night, when the house had gone quiet, I slipped into the study Thomas had once used. Rebecca rarely entered here, it was too full of his scent, his things, his presence. I sat at his desk and opened his drawer. Inside was a folder labeled Confidential. My heart thudded. Inside were documents I had never seen before, bank accounts, investments, even insurance policies. But one page made my breath catch. A life insurance policy. Dated only 2 months ago. Beneficiary, Rebecca. Amount, $50 million. My phone buzzed again. Another message. They tried to kill me. Don't sign anything. Don't believe her tears. Trust only me. Wait. My hand shook as I held the phone. Somewhere out there, my son was alive. And if Rebecca had buried an empty casket for $50 million, then I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was a mother with a mission. Because if she thought she could bury the truth, she had no idea who she was up against. I barely slept that night. The words on my phone burned into my mind. They tried to kill me. Don't sign anything. Don't believe her tears. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the house groan and settle, wondering if my son was shivering somewhere in the dark, waiting for me to act. By dawn, I had made a decision. If Thomas really was alive, then I needed proof that Rebecca wasn't just a greedy widow but a liar orchestrating something monstrous. At breakfast, I forced myself to play the part. Rebecca sat at the long mahogany table, skimming the newspaper, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the edge of her coffee cup. She wore pearls that morning, the same ones Thomas once bought for me but later gifted to her after she admired them too many times. I sipped my tea and watched her. We'll meet with the estate lawyer on Friday, she said casually. I'll need you to come, of course. Just a formality. Once the paperwork is signed, things will be simpler. Her eyes flicked up, sharp despite her smile. I felt the message's warning echo inside me. Don't sign anything. I set my cup down gently. Of course, dear. Whatever you think is best. Her smile deepened, but her eyes never softened. She believed I was pliable, old, easy to manage. That was her first mistake. Later that afternoon, when she left for her charity luncheon, I slipped into her bedroom. The scent of her expensive perfume clung to the air, thick and cloying. Her vanity was lined with creams and lipsticks, everything placed just so. But I wasn't here for her powders. I went to the jewelry box. Nestled among diamond studs and gold bangles was a flash drive. Strange place for it. I slipped it into my cardigan pocket. Back in my room, I plugged it into Thomas's old laptop. The screen blinked, and files appeared. My pulse quickened as I opened one. Spreadsheets. Transfers. Notes labeled Project Phoenix. Another file revealed scanned documents, fake medical reports claiming Thomas had suffered cognitive decline. My jaw clenched. She was preparing to paint him as incompetent, incapable of managing his own empire. But why if he was dead? I leaned back, heart pounding. Rebecca's plan was bigger than greed. She had been planning to erase Thomas whether alive or not. And she had the gall to sit across from me at breakfast, smiling as if butter wouldn't melt on her tongue. That evening, Rebecca returned home flushed and glowing, claiming she'd been discussing fundraising for orphans. I nodded politely, hiding the drive in a hollowed-out book Richard once kept in his study. Let her think I was the naive old mother-in-law. Inside, though, I was sharpening. That night, as the house fell quiet, my phone buzzed again. Meet me tomorrow. Noon. Elmwood Cemetery. Back gate. Alone. I gripped the phone until my knuckles whitened. My son. My boy was reaching for me. The next day, I dressed carefully, navy skirt, cream blouse, the old gray shawl Thomas once said made me look like royalty. I tucked the phone deep into my purse, pulled the shawl tight around me, and told Rebecca I was visiting an old friend. She barely looked up from her laptop, her smile thin and satisfied. The cemetery was hushed, the air cool with the scent of damp earth. I walked slowly, my cane clicking softly against the stone path. At the back gate, half hidden by overgrown hedges, a figure stepped out. My breath caught. Thomas. He was thinner, his beard rough, his suit worn. His eyes, those same green eyes he had as a boy, met mine, and for a moment the world tilted. Tears stung my eyes. Thomas, I whispered, my voice cracking. He pulled me into a fierce embrace, his hands trembling. Mother, he said against my shoulder. I didn't know if you'd believe me. I held him, inhaling his scent of earth and exhaustion. I thought you were gone. They said you were gone. He pulled back, his face hardening. Rebecca. It was all her. The accident wasn't an accident. She cut the brakes. I barely made it out alive. I've been hiding ever since. My knees nearly gave way. She buried an empty casket, I whispered. She's after everything, he said, eyes blazing. The company, the accounts, even the house. And she'll stop at nothing. That's why I warned you. You can't trust her. I swallowed hard, gripping his hand. She's pushing me to sign papers on Friday. Estate papers. His grip tightened. Don't. Whatever happens, stall her. I'm building my case, gathering proof. I have allies, but I need time. If she gains full control, it's over, for both of us. My mind raced. I thought of the flash drive in my book, the documents I had seen. Proof. Seeds of her betrayal. I have something, I whispered. Files. On her drive. Fake reports, transfers. Enough to start suspicion. His eyes lit with urgency. Keep it safe. Don't let her know you've seen it. If she suspects, she'll move faster. The sound of a car engine rumbled nearby. We both stiffened. Thomas pulled me deeper into the shadows. A sleek black sedan crawled along the outer road, tinted windows hiding its occupants. Rebecca's car. My stomach turned. Go, Thomas hissed. If she sees us, it's over. Go, mother. Please. I clutched his face in my hands one last time, memorizing him, then pulled away, walking back toward the churchyard as if I had been there all along. My heart pounded in my chest, but my face stayed calm. At dinner that night, Rebecca was radiant, her eyes too sharp, her laughter too rehearsed. The lawyers confirmed everything is ready, she said, sipping her wine. By Friday, the estate will be settled. Then we can move forward. I forced myself to nod. That's wonderful, Rebecca. Thomas would be proud. Her smile widened, but her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, watching me, testing me. I lowered my gaze, hiding the fire burning inside me. That night, when the house was silent again, I sat at Thomas's desk, the flash drive warm in my hand. My phone buzzed once more. Stay strong. Friday will decide everything. Be ready. I placed the phone beside the lamp and whispered into the stillness, Don't worry, Thomas. She thinks I'm just an old woman. But she's about to learn, I've buried people stronger than her. Friday was drawing closer, and with each passing day, Rebecca tightened her grip. She became bolder, moving through the house as though it were already hers. I watched her rearrange furniture, give instructions to the staff in a tone sharp enough to cut, even demand that the gardener pull out Thomas's roses my son had planted himself. They're old and tired, she said, standing by the window with her coffee cup raised like a scepter. I want something fresh, something that represents new beginnings. I hid my fury behind a small smile. New beginnings often grow from old roots, I replied softly. Her lips twitched. She didn't like being reminded of what had come before her. Each night, after she drifted upstairs, I returned to Thomas's study. I began sorting the files from her flash drive, printing what I needed, making copies, and storing them in places she'd never think to look. Inside the piano bench. Beneath the cushion of my armchair. Even in the flour tin in the pantry. Years of living had taught me one truth: power is not in what people see, but in what you hide until the perfect moment. Wednesday evening, Rebecca arrived home later than usual, her heels clicking on the marble floor as she strode into the dining room. Her face was glowing with excitement. I met with the board, she announced. They've agreed to transition me into Thomas's seat once the estate is finalized. They recognize I'm the only one who can carry his vision forward. I nearly choked on my soup. His vision? Thomas had worked for years building that company, sweating over contracts, battling competitors, traveling for weeks at a time. Rebecca hadn't so much as drafted a memo. And what about me? I asked gently, setting my spoon down. After all, I still hold my late husband's shares. They haven't forgotten that, have they? Her eyes flickered, but her smile didn't waver. Of course not, Mother. You'll be taken care of. You won't have to worry about a thing. Her words dripped with sweetness, but her gaze was all calculation. She was waiting for Friday like a wolf waits for the lamb to stumble. That night, my phone buzzed again. Be ready. She'll try to corner you at the lawyer's office. Don't show fear. I sat in the quiet of my room, my shawl wrapped tightly around me, and thought of Thomas hiding in the shadows, trusting me to keep his legacy safe. I would not fail him. The next morning, I decided to test Rebecca. Over breakfast, I mentioned casually, I've been thinking of updating my will. Perhaps leaving something to the community center where Thomas once volunteered. Rebecca's spoon froze midway to her lips. Her smile appeared an instant later, but I had seen the flash of panic. That's generous of you. But really, don't you think it's better to keep everything in the family? I sipped my tea, letting silence stretch. Family, I repeated softly, my eyes locking on hers. Yes, I suppose so. Her gaze sharpened. She knew I was playing a game, though she couldn't quite tell the rules. By Thursday, Rebecca grew restless. She hovered more, checking in on me, asking pointed questions about whether I'd spoken to the lawyer. She even entered my room without knocking, pretending she wanted to see how I was holding up. Her eyes scanned my desk, my shelves, the drawers. I smiled at her politely, though every muscle in my body stiffened. You're very quiet these days, she remarked, her tone light but probing. I hope you're not confused. Grief can do strange things to the mind. I folded my hands and tilted my head. Oh, I'm quite clear, dear. Clearer than I've been in years. For the first time, she faltered. Just a fraction of a second, but enough. Then she forced a laugh and left the room, heels clicking too fast down the hall. That evening, I prepared myself for what was to come. I laid out a simple black dress, the one I'd worn to Richard's retirement party years ago. Understated, dignified, not flashy like Rebecca's gowns. I packed my purse carefully, handkerchief, glasses, a small notebook, and in a hidden pocket, copies of the damning files from her flash drive. Friday morning arrived with heavy clouds. Rebecca was already dressed when I came downstairs, wearing a sleek navy suit that made her look more like a CEO than a grieving widow. Her hair was pinned, her lipstick perfect. Ready? She asked, her voice warm but her eyes gleaming. I nodded. Always. The ride to the lawyer's office was silent, except for the faint hum of the engine. I could feel her watching me from the corner of her eye, waiting for signs of weakness. I gave her none. At the office, we were ushered into a polished conference room, mahogany table gleaming under soft lights. The lawyer, Mr. Hughes, an old friend of Richard's, greeted us warmly. His gray hair was neatly combed, his glasses perched low on his nose. Mrs. Whittaker, Rebecca, he said, shaking our hands. I know this is difficult, but we'll get through the formalities. Rebecca leaned forward eagerly. Of course, Mr. Hughes. Thomas always wanted things to be simple. Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes cut toward me, daring me to contradict her. I smiled faintly, folding my hands in my lap. Mr. Hughes began reading through the documents, outlining the distribution of Thomas's assets. Rebecca nodded at each point, her lips curving into a satisfied smile. Then he slid a paper across the table toward me. All that remains is your signature, Mrs. Whittaker. This will finalize the transfer of Thomas's controlling shares to his wife. Rebecca's gaze pinned me. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with expectation. My hand hovered over the pen. I could almost hear Thomas's voice. Don't sign anything. I looked up slowly, my voice calm but steady. Mr. Hughes, before I sign, I'd like to review a few things. I've come across documents that raise questions. Rebecca stiffened. Her smile froze. Documents. I reached into my purse and laid a single sheet on the table. A fake medical report. Her signature at the bottom. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Mr. Hughes adjusted his glasses, scanning the page. His brow furrowed. This isn't from our office. Where did this come from? Rebecca's voice was sharp, almost shrill. This is ridiculous. Anyone could have forged that. I kept my tone soft, almost grandmotherly. Perhaps. But I thought it best to ask. After all, we wouldn't want any confusion in matters this important. Mr. Hughes looked at Rebecca, his expression cool. We'll need to pause here. I can't proceed until these concerns are clarified. Rebecca's face flushed red beneath her makeup. She turned to me, her eyes blazing. But I only smiled gently, folding the paper back into my purse. As we left the office, her heels struck the marble floor like gunfire. In the car, she sat rigid, her jaw clenched. At last, she hissed, "You're playing a dangerous game, old woman." I turned my face toward the window, hiding the small satisfied smile on my lips. Because what she didn't know was that I had only shown one page. The rest of her empire of lies was waiting in silence, ready to bury her when the time was right. And somewhere out there, my son was alive, watching, waiting, and trusting me to deliver the strike she'd never see coming. The ride back from the lawyer's office was suffocating. Rebecca sat beside me in the back seat of the sedan, her body stiff, her manicured hands clenching and unclenching in her lap. The driver kept his eyes fixed on the road, pretending not to hear the silence thickening around us like smoke. I could feel her gaze cutting into me, sharp and simmering, but I kept mine fixed out the window. The city passed in a blur, shops, stoplights, people crossing streets, ordinary life unfolding while we sat locked in our silent war. Finally, Rebecca broke. "What were you thinking back there?" Her voice was low, dangerous, stripped of its usual sweetness. I turned to her, my face composed, my tone mild. "I was thinking that your husband would want things to be done properly. With no confusion." Her nostrils flared. "You embarrassed me in front of Mr. Hughes. Do you have any idea how much you jeopardized? Do you have any idea?" I cut her off, my voice quiet but laced with steel. "I have every idea, Rebecca. More than you realize." Her mouth snapped shut, her eyes narrowing. For a moment, I thought she might strike me, but then she leaned back against the seat, a cold smile forming on her lips. "You're not as feeble as I thought. Fine. But this isn't over." She turned her gaze away, but I saw the fury flickering beneath her calm mask. "Good. Let her seethe. A cornered snake always shows its fangs before it strikes, and I wanted to see exactly how far she would go. When we arrived home, Rebecca disappeared upstairs without another word. I lingered in the foyer, staring at the grand staircase Thomas had once run down as a boy. I remembered him clutching toy airplanes, shouting that one day he'd fly the real thing. My chest tightened. My son was alive. He was out there, hiding, trusting me. And every move I made now had to count. That night, after the house grew quiet, I unlocked the hollowed book in Richard's study and pulled out the flash drive again. This time, I dug deeper. I clicked through folders Rebecca must have thought were hidden well: offshore accounts, coded transfers, contracts with names I didn't recognize. But one file froze me in place: insurance claim, filed. It was dated 2 days after Thomas's supposed accident. Rebecca had claimed millions in life insurance, transferring the payout to an account in her name. My hands trembled as I printed the document. She hadn't just planned his death, she had profited from it. I tucked the copy into an envelope and slipped it beneath the loose floorboard under my bed. Then I whispered into the dark, "She's going to hang herself with her own rope, Thomas. I'll make sure of it." The next morning, Rebecca was radiant again, wearing a cream silk blouse and gold earrings, her hair in soft curls. She hummed as she prepared her coffee, the very picture of a content widow. "Morning, Mother," she said sweetly. "I've been thinking, we should host a small gathering here soon. Friends, colleagues. A chance to honor Thomas and reassure everyone that business will continue smoothly." I sipped my tea, hiding the chill that ran through me. A performance. She wanted to parade her control, to cement her image as the grieving but capable widow. "What a lovely idea," I murmured. "Thomas always valued appearances." Her eyes sparkled, but there was something tight in her smile. She was testing me, measuring how far she could push. That afternoon, when she left for her so-called charity meetings, I slipped out myself. I walked slowly, cane tapping the sidewalk, until I reached the back gate of Elmwood Cemetery. Thomas was waiting, a hood pulled over his head, his eyes scanning the street. The moment he saw me, his face softened. "Mother." I touched his cheek, memorizing his warmth. "I found more," I whispered. "Insurance claims. Transfers. She's building an empire on your grave." His jaw clenched, eyes flashing with rage. "She filed insurance while I was hiding for my life?" "Yes," I said, pressing the papers into his hand. "And she wants to host a gathering here. To display her triumph." Thomas's face hardened. "Then that's when we strike. Public. Irrefutable. We'll show them the truth." I hesitated, fear knotting my stomach. "She's dangerous, Thomas. If she realizes you're alive too soon." He took my hands in his grip fierce. "I trust you, Mother. You've protected me when I couldn't protect myself. But this ends now. She cannot win." I nodded, my resolve matching his. Together, we began to plan. The days leading up to the gathering were tense. Rebecca flitted through the house, directing caterers, hiring florists, dictating every detail of the event. She never suspected I slipped away in the evenings, meeting Thomas in shadowed corners to refine our strategy. On Thursday night, Rebecca burst into my room unannounced. I was seated at my writing desk, carefully composing a letter. She scanned the papers with suspicion. "What are you working on?" I smiled faintly. "Memories. Writing about Thomas. It helps me process." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Instead, she leaned against the doorframe, her tone casual but edged. "You've been different lately. Stronger. More defiant. I wonder why." I met her gaze calmly. "Perhaps grief makes us stronger, Rebecca. Or perhaps it strips away illusions." Her lips curled in a mocking smile. "Careful, Mother. Strength can be dangerous in the wrong hands." She left, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. I sat in silence, my pulse steady. She was suspicious now. The time to act was closing in. Finally, the day of the gathering arrived. The house glittered with candlelight, the chandeliers blazing. Guests filled the rooms, their murmurs weaving through the air like music. Rebecca floated among them, her black gown hugging her figure, pearls gleaming at her throat. She was radiant, flawless, the very image of dignity. But I knew the rot beneath the polish. And soon, so would everyone else. I stood quietly near the grand staircase, my shawl draped around me, watching her charm the guests. Laughter bubbled from her lips, but her eyes flicked toward me often, sharp and wary. She knew I wasn't broken. She just didn't know why. When the room reached its height of chatter, Rebecca clinked her glass for attention. The guests fell silent. "Friends," she began, her voice warm and commanding, "thank you for joining me tonight as we honor my late husband, Thomas. His legacy will live on through the work we continue here. Together we will." Her words cut off as the projector flickered to life behind her. Gasps rippled through the room as an image appeared, the insurance claim, her signature scrawled across the page. Rebecca spun around, her face blanching. "What is this?" she demanded. But the slides kept coming, fake medical reports, forged signatures, offshore accounts. The evidence rolled on, damning and undeniable. Murmurs turned to whispers, whispers to sharp intakes of breath. "Who did this?" Rebecca shrieked, her voice cracking. "This is all lies." I stepped forward, my cane tapping against the floor. The room parted, eyes turning to me. My voice was steady, calm, carrying through the silence. "These are not lies, Rebecca. These are the truths you tried to bury with my son." Her face twisted in rage. "You old witch." But then from the back of the room, a voice rang out. Strong. Familiar. Enough. Every head turned. Thomas stepped into the light, his hood pulled back, his eyes blazing. Gasps erupted, glasses shattered on the floor. Someone screamed. Rebecca's face drained of all color. "No," she whispered. "No, you're dead. I saw." Thomas's voice cut through her panic. "You saw what you wanted to see. You paid for what you wanted the world to believe. But here I am, Rebecca. Alive. And I know everything. The room erupted in chaos, guests shouting, reporters snapping photos, phones buzzing with alerts. Rebecca staggered backward, her composure crumbling. "You don't understand," she cried, her voice shrill. "I did it for us. For the future. You weren't strong enough to." Thomas's face hardened. "You betrayed me. You betrayed this family. And now, everyone knows it." Rebecca's knees buckled. She collapsed into a chair, her hands trembling, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. The mask she had worn so carefully for so long shattered in an instant. I stood beside my son, my hand resting lightly on his arm. The storm had broken. But the reckoning was only beginning. The room was chaos, a storm breaking loose inside walls that had seen more than their share of polite deception. Guests shouted into their phones, flashes from cameras erupted like lightning, and whispers curled through the air like smoke. But I stood still, one hand steady on my cane, the other resting on Thomas's arm. My son was alive, standing strong beside me, and Rebecca's empire of lies had just gone up in flames. Rebecca slumped in her chair, pale beneath the glitter of her pearls, her fingers twitching like a pianist who had lost the tune. This is madness," she croaked, her voice trembling. "Thomas, please. Don't let them believe this." But Thomas's eyes burned with a fire I hadn't seen in years. He stepped closer, his voice low but cutting through the noise. "They don't have to believe, Rebecca. They can see it with their own eyes." He pointed at the screen where her forged documents glowed larger than life. "Every lie you spun. Every dollar you stole. Every attempt to erase me. It's all here." Gasps swept through the crowd again as another file slid into view, her signature authorizing the offshore transfer. Guests craned their necks to see, whispers sharp as knives, fraud, insurance claim, criminal. Rebecca's hands shot out as if to claw the evidence from the air itself. "Stop it. Turn it off. This is private." I took a step forward, my cane striking the floor with deliberate force. "Privacy ended the moment you falsified documents, Rebecca. You wanted a stage, now you have it. Everyone will see who you truly are." For once, she had no words. The projector clicked off, leaving the room in stunned silence. All eyes turned to Thomas. He drew in a slow breath, his shoulders squaring. "I will be filing charges," he said calmly. "Fraud. Forgery. Attempted murder by staged accident. I have no doubt the authorities will be very interested in your insurance claim." Rebecca's face twisted, panic flashing like a storm across her features. "You can't. You won't. I'm your wife." Her voice cracked on the last word, as if even she no longer believed it. "You stopped being my wife the moment you tried to bury me," Thomas replied coldly. The silence that followed was deafening. Guests avoided her eyes. Even those who had once laughed at her jokes, dined at her table, and praised her style now looked at her like a creature they couldn't recognize. Reputation is a fragile thing, it doesn't crumble slowly, it shatters all at once. Suddenly, Rebecca bolted to her feet, her chair toppling backward with a crash. She scanned the room, wild-eyed, her perfect hair tumbling from its pins. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "All of you. You think this is the end? You think you can humiliate me?" Her voice cracked into a shriek. "I'll destroy you before you destroy me." Two security guards, summoned by the event coordinator, stepped forward. Rebecca's eyes darted, her chest heaving, but she didn't resist when they escorted her out, her heels scraping against the marble floor like broken promises. The doors slammed behind her. Silence hung heavy. Then, as though a spell had broken, the guests erupted again, phones raised, voices churning, questions flying. But I didn't hear them. I looked at my son, alive, breathing, standing tall. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sharp. I reached for his hand and squeezed it. We had survived. That night, after the last guest had left and the house stood quiet again, Thomas and I sat in the study. Papers lay scattered across the desk, contracts, evidence, years of life twisted by Rebecca's greed. The fire in the hearth crackled, throwing shadows across Thomas's face. He looked older, wearier, but there was strength in him still. "Mother," he said softly, "I don't know how you carried this without breaking." I smiled faintly, though my heart ached with all I hadn't said. "Because I had to. Because I knew you'd come back to me." And because I couldn't let her win. He bowed his head, tears glinting in the firelight. I should have listened sooner. I should never have trusted her. You were blinded by love, I said gently, reaching across to brush his cheek. And love is the cruelest blindfold. But it's not your shame to carry. It's hers. He nodded, his jaw tightening. Tomorrow I'll go to the police. I'll bring everything. She won't escape this time. I leaned back, my cane resting against the armchair. For the first time in weeks, the weight pressing on my chest eased. But the battle wasn't finished. The next morning, news broke like wildfire. Headlines screamed of betrayal, fraud, and the shocking revelation that Thomas Whitaker, presumed dead, was alive and ready to reclaim his legacy. Rebecca's photograph flashed across every screen, her glamorous smile now a mask for scandal. By noon, reporters camped outside the gates, their cameras hungry for more. Rebecca tried to fight. She released statements claiming innocence, insisting she was the victim of a cruel trick. She called me a senile old woman, accused Thomas of orchestrating the stunt for sympathy. But the evidence was too strong, the recordings too clear, the documents too undeniable. By the end of the week, warrants were issued. The same officers she once bragged about knowing personally now arrived at her doorstep, their hands firm as they led her away in handcuffs. Her pearls swung wildly against her throat as she shouted at the cameras, her voice shrill and desperate. But no one believed her anymore. Thomas and I watched the broadcast from the quiet of the study. He exhaled slowly, relief softening his features. It's over, he murmured. But I shook my head. No, Thomas. It's just beginning. You have to rebuild. You have to make sure what she tried to destroy becomes stronger than ever. And he did. Over the months that followed, Thomas took back the company, not with vengeance but with quiet determination. He reinstated old employees Rebecca had dismissed, rebuilt projects she had abandoned, and turned away investors who had supported her schemes. Bit by bit, he restored not just his business, but his dignity. As for me, I found peace in small things. The garden Thomas once tended bloomed again, roses climbing the fence, defiant and beautiful. I spent mornings walking the grounds, afternoons reading by the fire, evenings sharing quiet dinners with my son. Rebecca's trial came in the fall. The courtroom was packed, the air buzzing with curiosity. I sat in the front row, cane in hand, watching as she entered in a plain suit, her face stripped of glamour. She avoided my eyes. The prosecutors presented everything: the forged documents, the insurance claim, the offshore accounts. The recordings of her voice sealed her fate. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, Rebecca's shoulders slumped, her mask finally gone. She turned once, as though searching for sympathy, but found none. As they led her away, I felt no triumph. Only stillness. Some wounds don't heal with victory, they heal with closure. After the trial, reporters asked me if I had any words. I said only this: love should never be mistaken for weakness. And trust, once broken, cannot be mended with lies. Life moved forward. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed with color, Thomas and I sat on the porch. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, breathing in the quiet. I reached over and took his hand. You came back to me, I whispered. His eyes opened, and he smiled. Because of you, Mother. Because you never gave up. Tears pricked my eyes, but this time they were warm, not bitter. For years, I had feared dying alone, betrayed by the family I had given everything to. But now I knew the truth: strength is not in what others give us, it's in what we refuse to surrender. And I had refused to surrender my son. The wind carried the faint scent of roses from the garden, their petals catching the last light. I closed my eyes and let the peace settle deep within me. Justice had been served. Love had endured. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free.